Hey everyone, this is Dylan, and today I'm going to be doing a movie review for you guys. So the movie I'm reviewing today is David Cronenberg's The Fly. Now, this movie is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year, so I thought it would be the perfect time to revisit the movie and also do a review over it. The Fly is about Seth Brundle. He is a scientist who, at a science gala or something similar, meets Geena Davis's character Ronnie, who is a journalist. She is detailing the event, and he says that he has an invention that will change the face of the earth. And she doesn't really believe him, so he invites her back to his apartment to look at the invention. And when they arrive at the apartment, he shows her these giant pods. And she's kind of like, alright, whatever. And he's like, I need something personal from you. So she takes off one of her pantyhose and he puts it into one of the pods. And a few moments later, the pantyhose appear in the other pod and she's kind of like dumbfounded. She's like, wow, that's incredible. And she really just becomes kind of like his biggest supporter. And that's where the love story begins. And so they test a couple other things. They test a baboon, and the baboon is basically turned inside out. After the death of the first baboon, he decides that he's going to make some adjustments, and he puts another baboon through the process, and it works perfectly. And him and Ronnie are like, alright, well, let's send the baboon away and have some tests done and see if anything is wrong with the baboon. And they celebrate. Ronnie leaves and Seth starts drinking, gets drunk, and he's gonna go through the telepods himself. So he does, and everything is fine once he gets out. But soon he realizes that things are not fine. Ronnie is really the person who realizes it first, but then once he finds out that something had happened, he realizes that he was not the only one in the pod. There was also a common housefly. The telepod has spliced their DNA together, so now Seth has fly DNA ingrained in his own DNA. And that's where I'm going to leave the synopsis. One of the first things I want to talk about with this movie is one of the lines in the movie, which is, be afraid, be very afraid. And this line is spoken by Geena Davis, and I had no idea that that line came from this movie. And that's a line that's pretty much ingrained in pop culture, and you never hear it referenced. You never hear it in reference to The Fly. So I think that it's quite interesting, and I definitely think that it deserved to be shouted out in this review. Let's talk a little bit about David Cronenberg. I think he is starting to become one of my favorite directors. I have not watched a ton of David Cronenberg movies, but I've been watching a lot recently. I watched Videodrome, and I've watched Crash, and I've rewatched The Fly, and I've watched a couple other ones that I can't think off the top of my head what they are, but I just like his style. I like that he's not afraid to go there, and I really like the aspect of body horror that he adds to a lot of his horror films. And I think that body horror is quickly becoming one of my favorite subgenres in the horror genre, and I just really enjoy. I think that there's like a visceral quality to it. So now let's talk about Geena Davis. So Geena Davis plays Ronnie, who is a journalist. She really becomes invested in Seth after witnessing the telepod, and I really appreciated her character and her treatment of Seth, especially after they realize that something is not right. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I did appreciate that when Seth started to see changes, that her character wasn't like, get away from me, but she embraced him and really tried to make him feel like they were going to get through this together. And speaking of Seth, let's talk about Jeff Goldblum. his performance is one of the ones that makes this movie. I mean, I think that him and Geena Davis are a great pair. It's no wonder why they were in so many movies as love interests or things of that nature. It's like a little bit insane how many movies they've been in together, especially around the time of this movie in the mid 80s. And I think that Jeff Goldblum plays this character extremely well. He's got this kind of internalized intelligence, if that makes sense. Like, he's one of those people that if you talk to, you know that he is intelligent. And I think that that is a really great aspect of this. Performance also gets really good after the transformation starts happening, where he kind of gets this hyperactivity and has this real manicness to him. I think that he plays that really well. And now let's talk about one of the best things about this movie, which is the practical effects that are done on Jeff Goldblum as the transformation into the Fly. This actually won an Academy Award for Best Makeup. So the makeup effects was done by Chris Wallace Incorporated, and they really took an approach of a 7-stage transformation. And the first couple stages start with very subtle changes where you get some like differences in the skin texture, and then we finally move all the way up to a full Fly human puppet. And I think that the way that the very subtle changes that happen are really great, and it really adds to that body horror effect of David Cronenberg's movies, where you get these really subtle changes, but as the changes happen, they become more intense and disturbing. And you can really see how this type of makeup and this transformation in general has affected different movies in recent years. One of the biggest movies that I think takes inspiration from The Fly is District 9. It's a very similar transformation process that we go through. I also wanted to talk about the science that happens in this movie with a teleportation scene, which happens a lot, and we see like a fusion of people or whatever, objects, and usually it's instantaneous. And I think that going to a genetic level is really smart for this movie because it can pull out the transformation, and it also can add to the more body horror of it. Because when you have a genetic issue, you're not going to see those changes immediately. Your cells have to go through the process of replicating for it to increase, and so I think that that's really smart, and I really like how we see that in visual representation of Seth Brundle. Alright, so now I want to talk about a couple of the metaphors in this movie. Well, the main metaphor is of disease and aging. I don't necessarily, I kind of see the aging one, but I think the disease makes a lot more sense. And David Cronenberg has said that it was a metaphor for disease, but at the time of the release, the world was going through the AIDS epidemic. I definitely see a lot of why people had seen this movie and thought it was a metaphor for AIDS, because there are, especially the early stages of Seth Brundle's transformation, I can definitely tell. But I think that we're far enough removed from the AIDS epidemic, and we've gotten more treatments for AIDS, so we don't really see the deterioration like we were seeing at the time of the epidemic. And I think that the disease metaphor is maybe a little bit more apt to watching it now in 2021. And to wrap up this review, I want to talk about the future of The Fly. So this movie did have a sequel a couple of years after it was released, but there was no involvement with David Cronenberg. But David Cronenberg, as early as 2009, has talked about having a idea for a sequel to The Fly, which is quite interesting because David Cronenberg doesn't have any sequels to his movies. And so this would be the first movie that he would consider doing a sequel for. And the Fox studio was interested in a sequel done by David Cronenberg. They even paid him to write a script. So a script has been written. The problem is they didn't greenlight it because there were budgetary concerns, and some of the things that he wanted to do in the movie were going to cost too much because Fox was like, we can't, this needs to be low budget because it's not a mainstream director. And there was a lot of internal politics, which we found out was probably due to Fox being sold to Disney. Unfortunately, I do not think that Disney would want to cultivate the Fly brand or work with David Cronenberg. They don't really seem like a match, which is a shame. I do hope that potentially we do see a Fly 2 with David Cronenberg's involvement. We also have Jeff Goldblum, who as recently as 2015 has said that he would 100% do a sequel to The Fly if David Cronenberg was attached, which is also interesting considering the outcome of his character, but also I would love to see them together back with Geena Davis. And so to round out this review, I want to talk about my rating. So my rating of this originally, when I first watched this movie, was a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And upon this rewatch, I've decided to give it a 5 out of 5. I think that this movie is really, really good, and my opinion has definitely changed, and I would definitely recommend that you guys check it out. So that is it for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below if you've seen The Fly and what you think about it, whether you like it or you don't like it, and why. And remember, if you're not already subscribed and you'd like to be, please hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a like if you liked it. Thank you guys for watching and have a great day. Bye.